and then the dates conflicted and they couldn't change it.
Oh my God.
So then I couldn't do it. I think Isaiah had originally read for McDreamy. Like it was one of those shuffle things.
Right. Okay.
So then I had to go away, and then Isaiah, and I'm not telling tales out of school. Everyone knows this story. So, and then Isaiah got the role, and then of course I didn't work, and just was like, oh no. And then did Prison Break, and then heard, oh, Shonda Rhimes wants to have a meeting with you. There's a spin-off of Grey's. This is years later, obviously, 3 or 4 years.
Long time.
And then
You know,
no,
what's funny?
out
So
in a wonderful way.
I worked with somebody almost in the reverse. I did a pilot for ABC the same year as the Grey's pilot called The Secret Service.
Oh yeah,
And it was, my joke is it's the only thing Kurtzman and Orsi ever did that failed.
right.
Clark Johnson went from directing the pilot of The Shield, the
Yep.
pilot of The Wire, pilot of The Shield, and then The Secret Service. Clark and I are still friends, thank God. But Justin Chambers was on that.
Mhm.
And I remember him showing up in an Escalade once, and I was like, "Oh my God, really?" He's like, "I have 5 children." I was like, "Oh no, get it, go for it."
Oh.
And he was like, "I need to work. I need to make $100 million to put these kids through school."
Yeah.
They did not pick up our pilot, but he was so good, and he was really, really wonderful in the Secret Service pilot, and just a wonderful human being.
Exactly.
Somebody at ABC saw it, and
Oh.
after they had shot and completely finished the Grey's Anatomy pilot, they cut him into it.
Right. I remember that. I
So
remember
if
the
you look at Chambers, he's only ever in singles in the pilot.
right. That's crazy.
And then he went on. I mean, is he still on the show? He
No,
must
he's
be.
not, but he was on it
Okay.
forever.
But he made his $100 million that he needed
But
to
it's
put all these
also
kids through
funny,
school.
how these things happen. They told me, we asked, are you going to kill me on Prison Break this year? Because we're kind of feeling that. And they ended up getting back and said, we're probably in like 4 episodes, da 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 da. I happened to have an episode off. So I went from Dallas to LA. I had an audition for a thing that one of our Prison Break directors, who I trailed, Sergio Mimica Gazan, in the pilot of. It was a cop show. I tested for it. This is a Wednesday. I didn't get it. Thursday, I got a call that Shonda wanted to have a meeting with me on Friday.
Dude, that's bananas.
So that show didn't go.
Yep.
If I had gotten it, I couldn't have done it. If I was in LA, if I wasn't in LA, that is,
Right.
I don't know if I would have been able to have that meeting. Like it's those things where
because there was no Zoom
too
back
hard.
then.
If you think about them too hard, you're like either everything is random or I'm lucky or it's predestined. I don't know.
Right.
Which
You're
is
either in a
scarier.
simulation.
Yeah, I don't know which of those things is scarier.
Yeah. That's a good question.
Yeah. You can't think about them too hard. You won't get out of bed.
No, are there any other roles that you guys like? I knew that about Isaiah Washington. See, Sarah, you learned something here today behind the velvet rope. But I also didn't know that about Justin Chambers, so I find that very interesting. So thank you for sharing that. Are there any other roles that you guys were so close to getting cast for where you could say like, oh, that's so-and-so?
I know who, when I got Prison Break, it was just, they only knew at that point that it was, a supporting role in the pilot. They didn't say it was going to be a series regular, which is something that they do when they have big ensemble casts a lot of times. And I had already done a pilot that year. And so I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this. And they called me and they basically were like, you have 12 hours. Otherwise, we're going to make an offer to this person, who I won't mention because that's just not classy. So I do know that if I hadn't been able to do it, or if I decided,
was it Isaiah Washington?
I know who it was. Not Isaiah Washington.
Okay, just checking.
That would have been crazy. But I do know that there could have been a different Kellerman.
I feel like I'm sort of digging for this, but I remember running into Robin Tunney at an audition twice in 1 week. This would have been after Prison Break, but not very long after.
After Prison Break.
Yeah. And so we knew each other and it was like, hey, oh my gosh, hi. And I remember I was like, how are you? And she's like, I just got done being like little kid sick. She's like, I couldn't get out of bed for like 3 weeks. I was like, oh no. And we had this, conversation the way you do in the hallway. And she went in and she read for it. And then I went in and I read for it. And I cannot for the life of me remember what it was.
Was it The Mentalist?
It was not The Mentalist because I never read for Mentalist. but it was something, I think it was a movie, and it was something that I was really interested in.
Mhm.
And I got the call a couple days later. They're like, looking like it's going to go to Robin. You're still on the short list. You'll just, just sit tight. And I was like, okay, thank you. And then a couple of days later, we were in the same situation, like back in an audition room, the two of us, but I got the part.
Oh.
And it was really interesting because it was one of those like, oh, there can be room in this business. There's room for good actors.
Mm.
And I can't remember what these projects were. I want to say that it was a play that I was reading for, but the only play that I've done around that time was at the Kennedy Center. And I don't know if anyway,
Maybe.
but it was, again, it did feel like there was a sort of symmetry that feels like either this has to come out of nihilism or it has to come out of we're all living in a simulation. And Elon Musk has written this script and,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Do you guys like when that happens, like you look at like, okay, so Isaiah Washington didn't work out, but I mean, this question is for both of you, but like when he is working out and it's enough seasons of Grey's, and Grey's Anatomy is the biggest thing that's ever happened to TV in the world at that point, and like you're not working because it's before Prison Break, like do both of you, I mean, no, not to put you down there, Paul, but like, do you guys then just say like, do you say it's the universe and this is how this business works, let's move on? Or do you have moments of like, man,
Both.
look at life could have changed right there.
Both. Both. It was painful. There's no two ways about it. And it felt like, oh, this is the thing. I'm going to be sitting at the bar and I'm like 60 being like, I coulda, woulda, shoulda.
I could have been a contender.
And then, 6 months later, I was on Prison Break, which I couldn't have been happier about. And then I also wouldn't have met my wife, wouldn't have had my daughter, because that all happened. I didn't get grades. I went off to do this theater thing. That's where I met her. I ended up on private practice, which was one of the best experience, Prison Break and private practice, two of the best experiences of my life. So, yeah, it can sting for a while, and then you go, this took a pretty good turn.
Yeah, one of the things I actually love about the business is, and of course it's the thing I hate too, but you don't have a certain amount of control. And so, me and my little inner Hermione, I'm like, I know what I want life to look like, and I know what's the best call for me. And I always look back and go, oh, okay. Like Paul said, if I'd done this and not that, then this wouldn't have happened and I wouldn't have had this experience. And I think, I mean, as cheesy as this may sound, as long as you are at peace with where you are and who you are right now, everything that leads up to it, you have to be grateful for.
Yeah.
And there are too many, like the losses to wins ratio when it comes to roles, you can't hold on to it because you're always going to lose more roles than you get.
You got the victories in stone and the losses in sand.
Yes. Who just said that to us on our podcast?
Somebody.
Matt Olmstead.
Matt Olmstead. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So great.
And also my brother, I remember years later though, my brother said, it had come up and my brother said to me, and maybe if you had gotten grazed, you would have died in a car accident on the way to set. Like butterfly effect. Like, you don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe the show would have sucked. Maybe you would have tanked it. Like, who knows?
That's amazing.
Maybe the show would have lasted only a few seasons.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Maybe it would have been a success had I been on it.
I mean, this is a whole podcast in and of itself, but Sarah, like overarching, like just high level, what was The Walking Dead like for you playing Lori? I know that's a very loaded question.
It's a loaded question, but no, I mean, honestly, the first thing that comes to my mind is family. We, Paul and I talk about this. Prison Break, we were all in physically different places. Paul was on a different show season 1 than I was on. The guys were in their thing. I have this big drive towards community. I don't entirely know where it comes from. It may
theater kids.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, because with theater, whether it's you and the techies and the AD, and you're all in it. And I wanted to create that feeling of a company on Prison Break, and it just wasn't that show, and it wasn't that cast. And I came off of that onto Walking Dead. Andy, John, and I met. Andy picked us up, which was terrifying because he had just learned how to drive. And of course, he's English. And so like John and I spent the whole time like basically saying Hail Marys under our breath. picked us up and drove us to an art
Hey,
department.
who is this? Andrew.
Andy Lincoln, John Bernthal, and I. We were the only people. We were the only cast there at the time. Before they'd even started shooting, and the three of us got in a car to go to a barbecue at the art department. And by the end of that, like we got there and we're like, oh my God, we're an hour early to the party. We went to